Click the links to support my vitally important work or to send me your Comicsgate project to be edited. Someone sent me some art to be edited, but I can't edit art because I don't know anything about really editing art. You got to send that to an artist. I meant your writing, and I'll give that a shot. I'm definitely no grammarian, but I can take a crack at storylines and stuff like that. Okay, this is volume 3, because I'm sure the first 2 volumes were so successful, and this has a new intro by, oh yeah, always archive everything. Whenever you go to a website, these sneaky bastards have a way of editing on the fly. Whenever I go to a website now and I know it's going to be a left to center thing, the first thing I do is just archive it. Always punch. I'll have to use some creative language here. Call them blonde people for this. But they have something very, very interesting other than the typical cancer. That's on the White House lawn. You effing. Okay, so a bunch of white devil, I don't know, angry white men, I guess, go to a Comic-Con, having a good time, and they're complaining about, I don't know, whatever it is you comic skaters complain about. Oh my god, diversity! Gay people in comics, heaven forbid. Yes, these evil white devils are just going to lose their mind when they find out there's a gay person making comics. Yes, that's their #1 priority. And here are some images from a war that happened 80 years ago. It's over, man. Let it go. Let it go. It's just not that important. Okay, this is, I guess, the YouTube show. Somebody's talking about comics from the 90s. And then, if they didn't have straw men, which they're probably bending over and raping, they wouldn't have anything at all. And I guess this is supposed to be Ethan Van Sciver. He's in his basement with his microphone, and they just portrayed him as some fat, neck-bearded idiot. Okay, Rock created a real superhero chick, blah, 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 blah. And this is some comic writer from the 90s. Kind of looks suspiciously like Chuck Dixon. Just got a DM back from him. He's going to be ready to rock and roll at noon, so we're going to come up, promote the hell out of his new Pure Fun. I'm guessing this is Comic Artist Pro Secrets. And let's see what they have Ethan saying. Now that that ugly, unattractive chick troll is gone, let's get back to talk. I guess that's Renfamous? Talking about good comics. Rock Hogan has written some of our favorite comics in the 90s, back when comics were pure. Were comics pure in the 90s? No, comics were always political. Yeah, comics were always left of center, to be fair. That's okay because they made an attempt at being balanced. They didn't always succeed. They were always left of center. If you go back now and you look through them, it becomes more obvious, but it wasn't like the stuff I've been reading lately. Comics weren't pure in the 90s, but they were fun. In the 80s and the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, yeah, sure. And then somewhere after the 90s, I think they just kind of died. They were fun. They weren't pure. And guess what? The proof is in the pudding. They were selling. Okay, they are back to spurging out, and they are just, it is like everything was going quiet for a while, and then the Cecil cover just blew everything up. I guess because it has some, it's some entry of CG going into the mainstream. Like, there were other people who were loosely associated with CG, but they didn't actually claim it. Cecil actually does claim it, and he had a cover, and it's like just a small, tiny little thing. And if you follow Twitter at all, you see that these people just, it's like it's 2016 all over again. So I was wondering about the Dynamite fiasco, if that's actually going to affect sales, because I know they pissed off the Renfamous and the Comicsgate crowd, but does Twitter outrage actually translate into lost sales? Twitter support doesn't usually translate into many gain sales. If you're selling, YouTube is a much stronger platform. If you're selling something that sort of has a complicated explanation behind it. I know it would be fun to laugh at Dynamite, but I suspect more people who buy their stuff don't care about Twitter fights. But what everyone said would happen, happened. People started talking about Dynamite working, or at least being somewhat associated, friendly with Comicsgate. The outrage mob put Gail in a position where she had to publicly throw Dynamite under the bus. Turns out that Nick Barucci was friends with Gail and was there for her when the shit hit the fan, and now she won't take his phone calls because she's suffering from Comicsgate derangement syndrome. Trump and Comicsgate made these people insane, literally in some cases. Their response is way out of proportion. Trump is just some guy. He's turned out to be a milquetoast moderate. Comicsgate comics are not anything crazy. It's just fun comics. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, you will enjoy Comicsgate books. Comicsgate is growing. The mainstream is shrinking. Even the mainstream knows that there's a problem, but they don't care. It will be around for their lifetime, and that's good enough for them. So Gail won't do her devil something comic. Nobody cares because it sucks. I guarantee it wasn't selling well. Someone on Twitter said that people will hire Gail just so she won't complain about them. There's probably some truth to that. I guess she must have a fan base, but I just can't imagine why. I've read almost all of her stuff, and she would be fine if she just dropped the girl power stuff. Do you want to sell 20,000 comics a month to college lesbians or sell 50,000 to everyone? I guarantee that Comicsgate has more reader satisfaction than Marvel lately, and I'm sure that Comicsgate will have more appeal to normies than Marvel. People are really tired of far-left stuff in comics. Don't get me wrong, I suspect that far-right politics wouldn't do well in comics either, but I've never seen it. I've heard that Vox Day has got some right-wing stuff, but I've never read it. But if it sells, it sells. That's the only thing that matters. They wouldn't be this angry if they weren't scared. Why do they care what Comicsgate does? They don't have a history of reading the comics because nobody has. They're new. Comicsgate has a history of reading Marvel. They have a right to express themselves. They are scared of Comicsgate because it challenges the narrative that people love far-left comics. They don't. They're willing to pay $40 for a 48-page comic. Comicsgate has made millions so far. Most of that is EVS, DNC, and Doug TenNapel, but there are a lot of campaigns that got their first comic out the door at $30,000. That's an amazing accomplishment. Screw the mainstream. Make your own comic. It's not easy, but when the mainstream is so bad, what choice do you have? Renfremus, Mark Waid, Gail Simone, Tom King, and the rest are not acting rationally. Normal, sane people don't obsess about a small subsection of people who make their own comics. The SJWs control 99% of the industry. Why do they care about the 1% that is Comicsgate? Because CG is exciting. The mainstream is boring. Even their good stuff just doesn't have the same fire that it used to, because they'll always force in some woke stuff. It physically hurts them to just tell a good story without talking about pronouns or gender identity. The vast majority of your audience think pronouns are just something for attention-seeking bundles of sticks. The only time they'll speak out against cancel culture is when it comes for them. Hopefully Tom King getting attention will wake some people up, but it probably won't because Comicsgate is pushing it. I keep waiting for normies to raise their heads and say, you know what, people should be free to work with who they want to work. Just put everything on the market, let the buyer decide. Tom King, Gail Simone, Terry Mayo, all loudly proclaiming their virtue. They're saying that if you have the wrong politics, you're not welcome in our club. Your club is an industry, and it's shrinking. For example, that Kickstarter, Always Punch Blonde People with a forward by Heather Antos. Their fascination with the Hugo Boss people is similar to their virtue signaling about masks and staying at home. The women with the stay-at-home Twitter bios are the same ones who are out rioting. The doctors who tell you to wear masks don't wear masks. In the beginning of Wu Flu, the doctor said, don't bother wearing a mask. When the narrative changed because they thought they could use it to hurt Trump, the exact same charlatans said, if you don't wear a mask, you're killing grandma. These doctors said any right-wing assembly was practically genocide. They also encouraged these left-wing gatherings. There is a core of truth to the Wu Flu and the rest, but the left is blowing it way out of proportion. If 10,000 people in America die from the flu every year, then 8,000 are going to die this year. More from Wu Flu, but less from everything else, just because people are washing their hands more often. The violence from BLM and Antifa has been ongoing for 2 months. Dozens of people have died. Some from traffic, but BLM has a habit of eating each other. They carry hot with one in the chamber and accidentally blast each other. The political violence in America is 90% from the left wing. So what does the media report? The media reports that the real threat is from blonde men with liberty devices. No, the facts do not support your narrative. The media is gone. They are the lying press, the dirty smear merchants. They aren't even concerned with money. They aren't as much after outreach clicks as crafting a narrative of absolute lies. They have a comic that shows a white guy with a crooked cross getting killed. But they also say that the Iron Cross is almost as bad. Then it was the 3 triangles. Now the ADL lists any and all symbols of Norse or Greek mythology as European hate symbols. Doesn't that seem a bit odd to you? The crescent moon, 770 million put underground. Hammer and sickle, over 100 million. And they proudly fly those flags. It's not about facts or logic. It's about hate and controlling the narrative. There are millions of commies in America, but you're not going to hear about them or the atrocities of the Bolsheviks because they are the media and colleges. How many films have you seen about the slaughter in China, Russia, or Cuba, or about the Japanese atrocities in China, Korea? Doesn't it seem odd that these stories never get told? What if someone did a Punch a Commie comic on Kickstarter and showed, well, use your imagination. In America, you have the right to be a commie or fashionable. And truth be told, Antifa attacked the elderly, disabled, gays, and minorities with wrongthink. If Antifa ever found guys marching in World War II costumes, Antifa never does shit because those guys will just kill you. So far, Antifa and BLM have shot each other or been shot by normies in self-defense. A few times, Antifa has shot elderly people in cars. Congratulations, that 60-year-old Mexican you shot was probably a fascie. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys, and I'll see you on the next episode.